Aquaman 2 opens with a montage which features his baby peeing into Aquaman's mouth twice. Not once, but twice does Aquaman's baby pee into his mouth at the start of this film. And I truly believe that that is the perfect way, symbolically, to begin the last film of the DCEU. It's finally here. A moment I never thought would happen, but I think I'm glad. I think I'm glad it's over. I am excited. I love James Gunn. I love the Suicide Squad. I love the Guardians films. I really am excited for James Gunn's DC universe. Yet I am somewhere deep inside disappointed that the DCEU isn't the same thing that the MCU became, and it couldn't find its feeding and find its footing, or whatever. I'm saying the wrong words, which is fitting for a DCEU review to just be all over the place. I do wish that Zack Snyder / whoever else made all these movies, vision somehow ended with something, because now the DCEU is over. And did it end with a bang? No. Did it end with some kind of epic conclusion, Endgame style? No. It ended with a sequel to a movie about one of its B-list characters as they go on a very standalone, self-contained little adventure, and they splash about in the ocean and run about and do a little action-adventure thing. And it's a movie. It's a movie I saw. I didn't hate it. I definitely didn't love it. It's a movie that I saw. This is not the DCEU ending that we all wanted and hoped for, but this is the DCEU ending that we deserve, and that the franchise itself, frankly, deserves. It's messy, it's inconsistent, it's a tonal nightmare. Some parts are actually pretty fun. The actors and the charisma that they bring onto the roles is undeniable. Jason Momoa, he's a good Aquaman. I think. I don't really have another comparison. Justin Hartley played him in that one cancelled episode pilot of Aquaman. He was pretty good too. I think it's different Aquamans for sure, but Jason Momoa has a charisma and a charm, and I like watching him do stuff. I like watching his baby pee in his mouth. I'm like, that's a good scene. It's not really. I laughed, but I think I was laughing at the film and laughing at my situation of like, sitting alone in a cinema on Christmas Day watching Jason Momoa play Aquaman and his baby is peeing in his mouth. And I hadn't even got over processing that, and it happened for a second time. And I was like, what film am I in for? This is a crazy way to end this franchise. Aquaman 1 started off in this, it was this unheard of phenomenon. I don't know how, it made $1 billion. It made over $1 billion. How? I don't know. I guess it was just lucky that it came out in 2018, I think, around then, and there was a big superhero, revolution? I don't know. It was like peak superhero time. It made over $1 billion. Everyone was all superheroing out all over the place, and we loved it. It was peak superhero times, and it made $1 billion. Imagine Aquaman 1 is a Gyarados, and it's splashing about in the ocean, and you're like, that's impressive. I'm terrified of it. How did this happen? It came from something, a Magikarp. It's now so big, because Aquaman before that was, very obviously the Magikarp of the Justice League. Because he's a joke. He even says in this film at the start, he's like, some people think I'm a joke because I talk to fish. And I'm like, we didn't when the first movie came out, because Jason Momoa was like, I'm buff and tough, and I was Khal Drogo, and I raped and pillaged, and I rode a horse or whatever. He's so good as Khal Drogo. And my God, have we come so far since Gyarados Aquaman 1. We have now come 5-ish years, and the superhero bubble, even though they've been talking about it bursting for like 10 years, at least for now, it has burst. It has burst, and as that bubble has burst, the DCEU has let out a little bit of a wet fart in the pool that is Aquaman 2, And if you imagine that Aquaman 1 was a big old Gyarados, we have de-evolved. Something that I'm sure happens in Pokemon. I don't know, I haven't played all the games, I'm going to be honest. We have de-evolved from Gyarados back to Magikarp. Aquaman 2 is Magikarp. Yes, we're still splashing in the ocean, but it is not very effective. And by that, I mean it sucks. Despite that, did I have a good time watching this film? Of course I did! Because I just love Aquaman. I just love Jason Momoa running about. He's like, look at me, I'm an Aquaman. And most of this film is essentially, like, instead of the first film being like a romantic kind of buddy situation where it's like him and Amber Heard doing a mission and they run about or whatever, this time he reunites with his evil brother. But this time his brother's good. The enemy of my enemy is my friend who slashed my brother or whatever. They're brother me's. Brother friends. They were brother enemies, and now they're brother friends. They didn't like each other, now they do. But they don't. But maybe they do at the end of the film. Who's to say? You've seen a movie, you can say they definitely like each other by the end of the film. And whilst this film is almost entirely ugly, messy, and disgusting, and the plot is stupid, the villain is terrible, and they waste the great villain from the first film, and so much is wrong, the core thing of this movie is that Aquaman has to break his brother, who is the villain of the first film, out of prison, and they've got to team up to fight the villain. And yes, no, I do hear myself, and I know what you're saying. You're explaining the plot of Thor 2, The Dark World, which is weird because Thor is like the MCU version of Aquaman. They're both from weird, separate civilizations. They come into the human world. Thor has a hammer. He's like, I'm a magic hammer boy. And then Aquaman rocks up and he's like, I'm a fish magic guy with... I don't have a hammer, but I've got some kind of trident situation. So yes, they are the same character. And yes, they've both got brothers who are evil, who tried to take the throne and then they overthrew them. And then now in the sequel of Thor 2 and Aquaman 2, they team up with that evil brother who's now an anti-hero brother. But don't you worry, this isn't a retreading of Thor 2 The Dark World, the most underrated MCU / superhero film in general. Super underrated. It's so good. Like it's not good, but I have fun with it. So just shut up. I like it. Shut up. I'm sorry. I'm getting a little passive aggressive. I've spent 15 years defending that movie. And every time someone's like, say something good about it, I'm like, I don't know. That hammer went into space when he went through the portal and it just was flying off to meet him without the portal. It just kept flying. And I'm like, that's fun. And I don't know, Natalie Portman's in it or something. But don't you worry, this isn't a retreading of Thor 2 The Dark World, but with an Aquaman skin coating on it or something. No. Well, no, it is, but they are self-aware. So self-aware, in fact, that Jason Momoa, who plays Aquaman, says to his brother, Patrick Wilson, who plays his brother, Ocean Master, he says, shut up, you Loki. He calls him Loki in the film. And my brain exploded. My brain literally broke. It stopped working. I don't know what happened for the next 2 minutes because I literally stopped functioning as a human being. Because Aquaman called his brother Loki because he's literally Loki. Meta or something? I don't know what to make of it. I do not know. I can't even speak words. I don't know what to make of this. Is it genius or is it the worst thing ever? This is the perfect ending to the DCEU. It's all over the place. I hate it so much, but I love some of it. There's an octopus character and he's like, I'm an octopus, and everyone hates him, but he's kind of cute and funny. There is giant krakens in this, and you might have guessed from the name of my channel, I love krakens. They're like my second favorite animal. I love a big kraken. They got tentacles and they're all disgusting and gross and kind of sexy and cool, but also awful. I do regret saying sexy. I just mean like, I'll cut that bit. I just love a kraken. I just love a kraken running about in the ocean. They're so slimy and weird and I just don't understand them. They're off and ugh. So I like all that. There's even a robot kraken octopus kind of situation, submarine robot thingy that looks like an octopus. All of that looks great. Some of the fighting looks good. Some of it atrocious. So let's talk the action, because this is a big old action superhero movie or whatever. The action is so good in parts and so unwatchably messy, confusing, just nothing, just noise on the screen. And the thing that splits them apart is that the noise nonsense, can't even understand what's happening, is all the underwater stuff, and then everything above water, which is a surprising amount for an Aquaman movie, the on top of the water, what do you call that? The surface battle, the just normal fighting that isn't underwater. All of that stuff looks amazing. It looks so much better than the underwater stuff. There are a couple shots here and there underwater that look good. Aquaman 2 is just like a Mario video game. There has to be an underwater sequence for some reason. I guess Aquaman 2, it makes more sense because Aquaman's like this underwater guy. He's like, I've talked to fish, I'm underwater. But despite the fact that we need it, for some reason in Mario and Aquaman 2, it is the worst part of the game / movie. And everything that isn't underwater is awesome and really good, like really good. There are 2 fights with Black Manta, our villain, he's got the big red eyes. He's like, I hate you, Aquaman. He has 2 fights and they are both really good. Really, really good. It's kinetic James Wan energy just going all over the place. He's all like, look at me, I'm James Wan, doing my conjuring thing, but with Aquaman. Like the first film, it's pretty good. Like, it's not great, but it's Aquaman. You saw the first one, like, it's not going to be better. Of course it's not going to be better. It's like a wet fart / splashy thing in the ocean or whatever. It's Aquaman too. I mean, what do you expect? A good film? I don't know why you would. This is the DCEU after all. It is so weird to me because I absolutely love the idea of civilizations that are just fish people, and there's a big crab guy and he's like, I lost my hand because I'm a crab but it grew back or whatever, and he's like just a big crab monster guy. And I feel like he was voiced by Gimli, but I do not have the energy and I don't care enough to Google it, so let's just go with it. Gimli played a big crab guy in this, which was awesome, but it's just like something about the film, I'm like, I just don't care. Like, I love all of this on paper. Octopus is playing the drums and all this crazy underwater stuff. It's so cool in theory, but then when you see it, there's just this veneer, like they've just smeared something on the screen that just makes it look off. And it's probably because people floating underwater with CGI hair that's floating everywhere, and technically it looks good, but it still just looks fake. It all just looks off to me. Everything, it's all colorful and beautiful. It's not like Namor's dark, dank, horrible nightmare in Black Panther 2. I hated his underwater world so much. This is more colorful and beautiful and it's better. But I still just find something about looking at them all underwater with their flowy CGI hair. It just looks off to me and I don't like it. And then every time they come above the surface, like there's another, like the best scene in Aquaman 1 is when they're in Rome or Sicily or whatever, running across the rooftops, and Black Manta shoots his red beams of eye juice or whatever, and he shoots them and then everything explodes, and it's awesome. It looks great, and the action, you can see what James Wan's trying to do. Then it goes underwater, and there's krakens and there's sharks and all kinds of fun stuff, but it just looks off. And I don't know how you change that. I think it's just a case of it's underwater, so you've got to make it look a certain way so it feels underwater, but setting so much action under there, it just doesn't work for me. It just doesn't work for me, and I wish it did because I feel like in theory it should work for me, but it just doesn't, and this is the case this time again. I hated everything underwater. It just looked off. And then every time they got out of the underwater, I was like, this looks pretty good. But I was so battered down visually from the underwater stuff that I found it hard. But as I said, I had a lot of fun with this movie, despite the fact that they completely ruined a great villain from the first movie. And in this film, I won't spoil it, but also who cares? It's Aquaman 2. The Black Manta villain has a really good reason to hate Aquaman, and in this he grabs a trident. In the first movie there was a good trident, now there's an evil trident of doom and possession of monstrous evil, and he grabs it and he becomes possessed by some other guy, and even though he's like the main villain, he kind of gets relegated to second villain-ish again, and I hated that. And his plot just was like not where you think it would be going after the first movie. Like, it is technically on the same path, but how that path gets there, it's just boring and gross and ugly, and it just sucked, and I hated it. I feel like they wasted Black Manta, who's so interesting visually, so I want an interesting plot to go with the visual of the big helmet and the big 2 eyes that are red, and he shoots red juice out of them or whatever. He's like Superman, but a Black Manta, whatever that is. So yeah, hated the villain, terrible stuff. Oh, Mira's in it in the first act and the last act. She's not meant to be in the middle act just for plot reasons. I think that was always the case. So he could team up with his brother, totally works. But in those first two acts, no, sorry, in the first act and the third act, every single scene she is in, she like is in the scene because they couldn't just like cut her out because it would just be weird for the plot. And for the story, Aquaman, like they had no scenes where he was grieving. So like they were like, oh, well, she's got to be in there, but she's cancelled or whatever. So we cut all her dialogue. So she says like 8 lines in this movie. And it's so weird. Like, there'll be a scene where all 5 characters or whatever are talking, and it cuts to all of them. They all say a line and do a bit in the scene. And it cuts to her, and she's just like, to be like, she's there or whatever. But she does not say words unless she absolutely needs to. Like, she'll sometimes say a word, and someone will respond to that word. And you're like, oh, because no one else said anything, and they couldn't get through the scene, plot exposition-wise, without putting her dialogue in. And that is the only time she speaks when she absolutely needs to. So if you're angry because she's cancelled on all those things, don't worry. They cut her out as much as they possibly could. And Nicole Kidman's also in this, but she isn't in that big weird fish situation she was in the first movie, so it's not as funny. It's still funny she's in the movie, because it's weird that they got Nicole Kidman. How did they get her? How'd they trick her? So spoilers for Aquaman 2, The Lost Kingdom. Where is it? Probably under the ocean or whatever. Spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. Turn away, but also it's Aquaman 2, who cares? The end of Aquaman 2 and the end of the DCEU is that Aquaman, King of Atlantis, brings Atlantis up into the open, metaphorically. He doesn't like rise it with his hands or anything. Metaphorically, he introduces Atlantis to the world, to the DCEU, and he ends on a pedestal, what was it called? A podium. He ends it on a podium speaking to everyone. He's like, I am Aquaman and I'm going to do a big thing. And it's big and emotional. It's not emotional. He says words or whatever. And there's all of the world. It cuts to like Venice and I don't know, other parts of the world. I noticed Venice because I'm like, Venice, ocean. I get it. Aquaman. And all these people are watching on TVs or whatever in different parts of the country. You know how they do it. And he does a whole thing where he's like, we will stop global warming. Oh, yeah, that's right. The villain's like, I gotta melt this frozen thing to escape this possession demon of doom and destruction from 1,000,000 years ago. But I'm melting the ice caps, but people were already melting the ice caps. Global warming or something. It could, it could have made that work. And they don't even try. They don't even try to make it work. It's terrible and stupid. It's not a theme. It's just they say the word global warming a couple of times. Could have been something interesting about how humanity... You get it, but it's not. And so he's all like, we'll fix global warming with our technology under the ocean and your technology that's not under the ocean, and we'll do some stuff together. And everyone's like, oh my god, it's an Aquaman. And that's all interesting, and I guess that's a fun way to end the DCEU where they know that there's an Aquaman, even though they already knew, but now they know he has a bunch of friends underwater. But no, the actual ending, post-credits aside, which is just a little joke. He puts a cockroach in a burger. He's like, cockroach, joke from earlier, but burgers. I'm not a racist to people who are above the ocean or whatever. Ocean Master eats a burger. It's nothing. It's fun, but it's nothing. But the end of the film, the end of the DCEU, is Aquaman, like, he's got the mic and it's all normal. Then he grabs it and the mic goes, and he grabs the mic and he looks into the camera and... You might remember the DCEU's enemy/frenemy/ competition. The MCU began its MCU journey of expanded university things with Iron Man grabbing the microphone and looking at the camera and being like, I am Aquaman. I am Iron Man. And he's serious and the movie cuts to Iron Man, song, Iron Man. And that's the whole thing. And that's the beginning of the MCU. And the end of the DCEU is Aquaman barreling the camera, referencing, parodying, I don't know what he's doing, but he's doing some kind of Iron Man thing, and he goes, I am Aquaman! Woo! Whoopity-boo! And it's just like Jason Momoa did as a joke on set, the way you kind of feel like, because he's a fun-looking guy, the way he's just like, yeah, I'm Aquaman, whatever, bro, whoop, whoop. And they went... That's a fun look, like, it's like on set doing a riff where it's like, hey, well, remember how Iron Man started that franchise and now I'm ending it? And it's just, it's baffling. It's crazy to me. It's like, the whole film is just nonsense. And it's everything you'd expect from the final DCU little whimpering splash little wet fart of a movie that's pushed out at the end, forgotten by the franchises. They're already moving on to James Gunn's. But that is such a... It's an ending. It's an ending to the franchise. And I loved it. There's also about 3 moments in this film where Jason Momoa, like, excitedly, like, is like, we should drink some Guinness. Like, there's a point where he's like, baby's sleeping after the baby montage, and he's just like, and his eyes are like, I've never seen a man more excited, and he just grabs a Guinness with his dad, and he starts drinking, and there's like 3 or 4 moments in the film where he either is drinking a Guinness with his dad, or talking to his brother about how good drinking is, and it just feels like Jason Momoa's, like, energy and love for just partying, and having a fun time, and having a beer with the boys, just seeped into Aquaman, and they went, just keep it. Like, this film is nothing. Aquaman is nothing. It is carried by Jason Momoa's energy and presence, and just charisma. What a 10 years it's been. 10, 12, 13. Let's go with 10 years. 10 years is clean. 10 years. 14 to 19 films. However many there's been. Somehow not enough, and somehow too many.